to Learn and Love Music. I'm Duane Hulbert. This week we're going to do two wonderful works by Frédéric Chopin. One of them is very well known and the other one is you probably have never heard before. They have something in common though. They're both in the key of C-sharp minor, kind of dark and brooding, but each one has kind of a different story to tell. And I'm going to share some wonderful moments in these pieces with you. Don't forget to subscribe. We want to see you back again. So let's get started with two pieces by the wonderful Polish composer Frédéric Chopin. First, we'll look at 5 of my favorite moments in the waltz, the Opus 64 number 2. What's really important about Chopin is following the rests. And when Chopin writes a rest in, especially these 16th rests, they're very small. They are extremely important in giving you the right feel of the rhythm. Always make sure that you lift your arm up when you play those rests. So as you listen, make sure you watch what I do with my arm. That's the character of the waltz. Here it goes. It's important that you allow yourself a little bit of time. It's called rubato, and that's okay in those spots because that's what Chopin wanted. My second favorite moment is what is called tempo giusto, which means a very steady tempo. You can't bend it as you do the opening section, but it has to have a smoothness to it. In order to get that smoothness, we have to use very legato fingering, which would be 3-2, 3-2, 3-2. What Chopin does here is he writes this long 5-bar phrase that doesn't have any break in it. We have to play very close to the keys and really give it shape. So here's that moment in the piece. And then back to the waltz. And the reason I love this moment is because of the legato line. Legato is hard to play when you have to do repeated notes, and this is a great example of that. Very close to the keys and very connected. My third favorite moment in this waltz is where you play these swirling 6-note groups of notes. And in this passage, unlike the beginning, it has to be done exactly in tempo. In this passage, he swirls these notes through and it's over a 4-bar phrase. So it has to be connected, it has to be smooth, and very, very quiet. It's marked pianissimo. I'll do it slowly so you can sort of see what I'm doing technically. I move around, I rotate, and we put it a little bit faster. The beauty of this passage is the legato touch, close to keys, and the quiet brilliance that comes out of this passage. The fourth moment that I love so much is when Chopin writes this in a slower tempo, più lento. It's a middle section. It's in D-flat major, which is sort of related to C-sharp minor. It's the same pitch, only now we're playing in flats instead of sharps. But the wonderful part about this is that he uses ties across bar lines to create this almost off-balance feeling with this melody. And also in the left hand, I'll show you the left hand too. The left hand does not have the regular umchak kind of thing. It almost has a suspension on each end of the measures. 1, 2, hold, 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 hold. It's very different than the umchak kind of, but it's very beautiful because it has that sense of urgency because of the timing and the ties. Let me put it all together for you. Hold, remember when I was a student, my teacher wanted me to always hold on to those notes. The word is tenuto, and it's a great way to give that feeling of a suspension in music. And finally, the fifth moment, the scale passages that occur a couple times in the piece. There's one that's in the middle of the piece, but then it's repeated at the end of the piece, but this time it's marked più mosso, or even faster. The hardest part about this passage is that the last note of the 6-note groups is with the thumb. It's really important that you not play the thumb loud at all. Light, light, and then without stopping. Because what Chopin does here is he writes each individual measure separately. So we have a 6-note group, a 6-note group, 6-note group. But it's played at a very, very fast tempo, especially near the end. And a lot of times when people play this, they really work up a lot of energy and get it going fast. But the important thing is to keep the control and also save yourself for some dynamic change on the very last 3 lines, because at the end, the ending is fabulous because it has this pianissimo legato touch, but at the end it just disappears into nothingness. Here's the ending. Fabulous music. So now let's look at the Chopin Nocturne. Just a little bit of an aside on nocturnes. Everyone studies the nocturnes out of a book, and in the book there are 19 of Chopin's beautiful nocturnes in the book. But this one is a different one. It's opus posthumous. It was published after his death, but it's a marvelous piece of music. It's almost sort of forgotten in a way. It's also in the same key of C-sharp minor, but here, after a rather somber opening, we end up playing this section as we would any other Chopin waltz, which is having a beautiful left hand accompaniment. One of the things that I do whenever I have that kind of accompaniment, I try to create a motion. In this case, I like to use a counterclockwise motion with each of the half bars. So one bar, half bar, another half bar, with a beautiful melody on the top. We always listen for the melody, but it's the accompaniment that really counts because it creates the forward motion and also the mood of the piece. But remember, always keep it steady. My second favorite moment in this piece is the passage marked con forza, or with force. After this beautiful opening, he writes in a passage almost out of nowhere that is marked with a very high C sharp and a brilliant run descending from above. The end of the opening section, and suddenly out of nowhere, back to the quiet music. Out of the blue, forte, he marks con forza, with force. There's a certain kind of brilliance in this passage that sort of defies the mood of the piece. But I think it's a mark of genius in Chopin. And a third wonderful moment. In the middle of this nocturne, Chopin puts in a little mazurka. What is a mazurka? It's a dance in 3/4 time, but very, very different from any kind of a waltz, or in this case, a nocturne. But it gives it a different character. I'm going to play the end of the lyrical section. You'll hear where it changes very abruptly. So here's the end of it. Cadenza. And back to the Nocturne again. It's so charming, this little section. It has nothing to do with the Nocturne, but it's like a little polonaise stuck in the middle of it. Just another stroke of skill Chopin has as an artist. And finally, the fourth wonderful moment in this piece, the ending. We have a little bit of this marvelous nocturne type of sound near the end. Kind of a recap of the beginning a little bit. And suddenly at the end we hear these scales, 18 notes. Now 36 notes. And then 11 notes. And then 13 notes. I think what makes this piece so special is the way that he puts these virtuoso passages in the middle of the piece, or actually toward the end of the piece, but it should never sound like it has a lot of energy or fire. It's just this beautiful, rippling kind of sound, so typical of Chopin. I hope you've enjoyed this episode on these wonderful pieces by Frédéric Chopin. Don't forget to subscribe and make sure you check out our companion video where I'll be playing both of these pieces in their entirety. We'll see you next time on Learn and Love Music.